Am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend that we're done if she doesn't want another kid in the future? Obligatory throwaway because friends know my real account. Background: I'm 28 with no kids. My girlfriend is 26 and has an 8-year-old son from her previous relationship. She was with the guy since they were kids, but when she got pregnant, he dropped the ball. He completely panicked and walked away from his responsibilities, leaving her to handle the fallout all on her own. She had it pretty hard during the early years, and it was a huge struggle for her to balance work, school, and her son. I can only imagine the sheer exhaustion of trying to study for exams with a crying toddler in a small apartment, working part-time jobs just to keep food on the table, and having absolutely no financial backup or emotional support from a partner. She didn't let it break her, though. She made it work through pure resilience and ambition, and she is now in law school, working hard toward a career that will secure a great life for them. The kid's dad made a change about 3 years back when his own father died. The shock of losing his dad seemed to wake him up, and he has since been helping out with child support and taking his son for scheduled visits. But even though he is in the picture now, the damage from those first 5 years of total isolation was already done to her mental state. We've been together for a year and 2 months, and I really do love her. We built a beautiful routine together over this past year, and I've completely fallen for her determination, her intelligence, and the incredible way she cares for her son. However, when we first got together, she did mention that she doesn't see herself having other kids because it was incredibly hard. She values her time alone when her kid is away, and she wants to travel with her son being that he's bigger now. She explicitly laid it out for me during one of our very first deep conversations, explaining that she had finally reached a place where her head was above water. Her son is older, he is fully toilet trained, he goes to school all day, and she can finally have a conversation or read a textbook without constant interruptions. She told me that she treasures the quiet weekends when her son goes to stay with his biological father, using that rare time to rest, catch up on heavy law school readings, and just exist without being needed by another human being. She also emphasized that she has a school-age kid and doesn't want to start over with an infant. The thought of going backward into sleepless nights, diapers, teething, and the intense dependency of a newborn completely overwhelmed her. At the time, we were too early in our relationship for me to complain about it or try to change her mind. We had only been dating for a few weeks, so it wasn't my place to argue about long-term family planning or map out a hypothetical future. I just listened, nodded, and assumed that as our relationship grew deeper and more serious, her feelings would naturally evolve. I believed that love and stability had a way of changing people's minds about these things. It wasn't brought up again for some time, and we just enjoyed each other's company, letting the months roll by smoothly without addressing that underlying difference in our life goals. Over the course of our year together, I became deeply integrated into her daily life. I would watch her sit at the kitchen table buried under massive legal textbooks, highlighting case law while her son played with blocks on the rug nearby. I started helping out where I could, picking up groceries or taking her son to the park so she could focus on her midterms. Seeing them together made me feel this intense desire to build a permanent life with her. But every time I pictured our future, I automatically envisioned a baby of our own running around the house. I couldn't picture a life where I never got to experience being a biological father, and I couldn't imagine our family unit remaining exactly as it was forever. Because everything was going so perfectly between us, I kept pushing the conversation off, telling myself that there would be a better, more secure time to talk about changing her mind once her law school stress minimized. Fast forward to last night. We were sitting on the couch together, just relaxing and watching something on television after a long, exhausting week. The show was playing in the background, and we were just making casual conversation when I mentioned that my coworker has left work to have her 4th kid. It was a simple observation about my shift at work, but she immediately reacted to the numbers. She shook her head and said that she couldn't imagine having that many kids. I got a little offended being that my parents had 5. I grew up in a loud, chaotic, wonderful household where there was always someone to talk to and a massive support system. To hear her dismiss a large family size so easily felt like a personal slight against my own upbringing and the environment that shaped who I am. She noticed the shift in my posture and told me that that's what worked for my parents, but it wouldn't work for her. I asked why, genuinely wanting to challenge her perspective, and she calmly listed the reasons above. She went right back to talking about how much she values her current independence, how hard the infant years were for her, how she is finally on the cusp of starting her legal career, and that 4 kids is just excessive for anyone trying to maintain their own identity and sanity. Hearing her state it so definitively made a wave of anxiety wash over me. The easygoing atmosphere in the room disappeared, and I felt this sudden pressure to address the issue head-on. I tried to reason it down to 3 or even 2. I told her that nobody was asking her to have 4 children, but surely having a couple of kids together wouldn't be the same nightmare she experienced in her past. I tried to bargain, hoping she would give me an inch, a sliver of hope that she was flexible. But she didn't hesitate or sugarcoat it. She looked at me and said she doesn't want any children but her son. The way I see it, the only reason it was so hard was because of her age when she first had him. She was only 18, an absolute kid herself, completely abandoned by her partner and forced to navigate poverty and young motherhood simultaneously. My logic is that any future children we produce will be secure and she won't be alone or have to struggle. I am an adult with a stable career, an income, and a deep commitment to her. If we had a child together, it would be a completely different reality. She would have a partner taking half the shifts, helping with midnight feedings, paying the bills, and ensuring she had all the support in the world to continue her career. I couldn't understand why she was applying the trauma of her past to a hypothetical future with me. For background, I have 4 siblings while she has one sister who lives in another state. Her sister is much older, and because of the physical distance, they rarely see each other or talk. She doesn't understand how important siblings are. My brothers and sisters are my entire world. They are my built-in best friends, and we lean on each other for absolutely everything. The thought of her son growing up without a sibling, and the thought of myself never getting to see my own child experience that irreplaceable bond, broke my heart. I tried to explain to her what she was missing out on, trying to describe the beauty of watching children grow up together and share a life. But she just sat there, her expression hardening, completely unswayed by my arguments. She told me that her son is perfectly happy and that she isn't going to compromise her mental health and career for a romanticized concept of a large family. The conversation began to spiral. The more she defended her stance, the more panicked and angry I became. I felt like she was completely shutting down a massive, non-negotiable part of my future without even considering my feelings or my desires. I felt rejected and unheard. Out of sheer frustration, wanting to shock her into realizing how serious this was for me, I decided to play my biggest card. I told her if she's unwilling to have even one child from me in the future, then we're done. I expected her to back down, to cry, or to at least tell me that we could revisit the topic later when things were less heated. I thought the threat of losing our entire relationship would make her reconsider her stubbornness. But she didn't blink. She just looked at me with a cold, resolute expression, agreed, and said we're done then. I was completely stunned. I sat there on the couch, the silence crashing down around us, and I am still incredibly hurt. This is a hill she's willing to die on. She's super smart, but so hard-headed. No matter what I said all night, no matter how much I tried to explain myself, soften my tone, or backtrack on the finality of my statement, she wouldn't hear it or budge her views at all. She told me that she had already given her answer on day one, and she wasn't going to let me string her along for over a year only to issue an ultimatum about her own body and life choices. She stayed completely firm, refusing to negotiate her boundaries. I'm hurt because I made the empty threat and she very easily went through with it. I didn't actually want to break up with her. I was using the relationship as leverage to force her to see things from my perspective, and she called my bluff without a single tear or hesitation. It makes me feel like our 14 months together meant nothing to her if she could walk away the exact second I voiced my deeply held need to be a father. I'm not feeling valued at all in this situation. I love this woman, and the thought of us having an expiration date kills me. I want to marry her, I want to build a life with her, and I want to have kids with her, and she's just completely uninterested in that version of the future. She also said I was being an asshole and not taking her experiences into account when I totally am. I acknowledge how hard it was for her, which is why I think she would have a totally different experience if she tried again. She's not 18 anymore, she has financial security, and she will have me by her side to carry the weight with her. I am not her ex, but she is treating me like I'm going to abandon her the same way he did. I want her back so badly, but I don't know what to say to fix the damage I've caused. She seemed very certain when she agreed to the breakup, and she hasn't reached out to me at all since last night. Please tell me, am I the a-hole? Update. Well, it's been about 3 weeks since my post and my breakup. And it took almost that full time to let it sink in what I've really done. At first, I spent most of those weeks angry and embarrassed instead of actually understanding why things ended the way they did. I read the comments on my original post over and over hoping to find people who agreed with me, and when I found a few, I held on to those instead of paying attention to the thousands telling me I was wrong. I convinced myself that people online just didn't understand the situation because they didn't know us personally. I self-wallowed for some time and attempted to guilt-trip her and get my siblings to talk to her for me. What a mistake that was. My older sister reached out to her without telling me beforehand exactly what she planned to say. Apparently she tried to explain that I was family-oriented and that I had good intentions, and somehow that made everything worse. My ex ended up calling me later that night absolutely furious. I've never heard her sound like that before. Not even during the breakup itself. She told me that involving my family after she already ended things proved I still wasn't listening to her. According to her, the breakup should have been the end of the conversation. Instead, I treated it like a negotiation I could still win if enough people pressured her into reconsidering. She called me manipulative, selfish, and immature. At the time I was defensive about it, but after sitting with it for a while, I realized she wasn't wrong. One thing she said really stuck with me. She told me that throughout our relationship, every time she spoke about her own future, I quietly replaced it with the version I wanted instead. I didn't fully understand what she meant during the call, but afterward I started replaying conversations we'd had over the last year. She had always been honest about not wanting more children. There was never a point where she lied to me or led me on. I just assumed that because I loved her enough, because I thought we worked well together, because I believed I could give her a better experience than she had at 18, she would eventually change her mind. That's the part one finally understand now. I didn't accept her decision because I never actually viewed it as final. I treated it like an obstacle instead of a boundary. I think over my life I always had an idea that with enough perseverance anyone's mind can be changed. I don't know where I got this from. Maybe from watching relationships around me growing up where people constantly compromised on huge life decisions and called it love. My parents had 5 kids, my dad always talked about family like it was the most important thing in the world, and I guess I internalized the idea that wanting children was automatically the right path. If someone didn't want that, then they just hadn't experienced the right circumstances yet. That mindset carried into this relationship in a really unhealthy way. I reread my original post recently and honestly felt embarrassed by the way I talked about her. The line about her being hard-headed especially bothered me. She wasn't stubborn for knowing what she wanted. She had already lived through raising a child under difficult circumstances. She knew exactly how much work and sacrifice it required because she had actually done it. Meanwhile, I was talking about future hypothetical children like they were an easy compromise. I also noticed how dismissive I sounded about her experiences. I kept framing things as if the only reason motherhood was hard for her was because she had her son young and without support. That completely ignored the fact that pregnancy, childbirth, and parenting are physically and emotionally demanding even under the best circumstances. I reduced years of her life down to a problem I thought I could solve for her. Among the things she said on the phone, one was that she found my lack of respect for her body and choices appalling. At first I thought that wording was harsh, but now I understand why she said it. I made it seem like because I was offering stability and commitment, she should reconsider having another child for my sake. Like her body and future were somehow part of a negotiation. That realization hit me pretty hard. The breakup also forced me to acknowledge something else that I ignored while we were together. We weren't nearly as aligned as I thought we were. I had already started imagining marriage, future holidays, multiple kids, a house big enough for all of them, the whole thing. Meanwhile, she was focused on law school, building a stable future for herself and her son, and enjoying the stage of life she was finally reaching after years of struggling. Looking back, I think she loved me, but in a much more grounded and realistic way than I loved her. I got swept up in this idealized version of what our future could become. She stayed rooted in reality. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I realize how unfair my ultimatum was. I framed it like she was choosing not to value me, but really I was telling her that our relationship only mattered if she agreed to live the exact future I wanted. There wasn't much room for her as an individual in that equation. After the breakup, I stopped hearing from her completely except for that phone call. I haven't reached out again. I don't think I have the right to keep pushing for closure or forgiveness after everything. One of my siblings told me she looked happier recently, and honestly that stung to hear, but I also understand it. The relationship probably became exhausting for her near the end. The part that hurts most now isn't even the argument about kids anymore. It's the regular parts of our relationship that I took for granted because I was so focused on the future I wanted. I miss going to the park with her and her son. Those days were nice and calm, and I didn't appreciate them enough while they were happening. I miss helping him with homework while she studied nearby. I miss movie nights on her couch where all 3 of us would fall asleep halfway through something stupid on Netflix. I miss hearing about her classes and pretending to understand legal terms while she laughed at me. Those moments were real and good, and I ruined them over a future that only existed in my head. I let some fictional children and my bad habits ruin something good. I have a lot of self-reflecting to do, and while I'm still sad, I know now that her dumping me was really for the best. Thanks guys for being honest. TLDR, we didn't get back together and I'm the asshole.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update.